Now, so are credit default swaps really weapons of financial destruction, or are they tools to reduce risk and boost profits? Well, for both sides of the story, and perhaps even to find some common ground, we are joined now by David Green. He is the former head of international policy coordination and EU affairs at the Financial Services Authority, and Philippe Bonnefoy, the CEO and chairman of the hedge fund group Cedar Partners, who believes banning swaps is ludicrous. David, first of all, both of you, welcome to the programme this morning. David, if I might start with you, surely credit default swaps are a way of hedging risk, and should investors, institutional investors particularly, really be expected to buy Greek debt and not be able to insure against a potential default?
I think all derivatives can be both forces for good and, if misused, forces for perhaps not mass destruction, but quite a lot of damage. What regulators are interested in is making sure that people who use these instruments really know how they work. We've had lots of examples recently of people using them who didn't know how they work, and also people who enter into contracts through them really are able to pay if they have to pay up. And there's been a problem with that recently. So that's what regulators are interested in, not in whether banning them, but making sure that misuse of them doesn't cause collateral damage.
Philippe, would you agree that some people are using them who don't really know how to use them, and indeed that they have been misused?
Well, I think that ultimately they're fantastic hedging tools, so to ban them is a ridiculous idea. The general use of them is by sophisticated institutions, almost all of whom are regulated already. So the regulatory legs are there. I think we all agree that regulation needs to be there and be in place. But the idea of your banning the use of a hedging tool is just bizarre.
So you don't think that they should be? You don't think that they should be banned? You think regulation is we've got enough regulation in place? Clearly, David, you think that more regulation is needed. Is that right?
More regulation may be needed.
Right.
I think quite a lot of people are looking a lot more carefully at these instruments. There will need to be further work to find out whether there have been instances of market abuse in some kind of way in relation to these instruments. Market abuse can take place in relation to any number of different instruments. I don't think there's anything special about these particular ones. And whenever a particular financial instrument is used as the indicator of decline in confidence, whether it's in a company or in a country, there are bound to be questions asked.
Philip, if we look at what's happened in Greece, this is really obviously what's prompted this whole thing. A lot of European leaders talking about actually banning credit default swaps. Greece has come under an awful lot of pressure from speculators. It might not have caused the crisis, but it certainly hasn't helped, has it?
Right, so let's look at Greece as a specific example. Greece, the credit default swap market traded at 4.5 basis points in the middle of 2007, so 3 years ago. Right now we went to 450, we're now at 292, I believe, in spreads. The reality of the CDS market for Greece is it represents 3% of the outstanding debt. In Europe, the 11 trillion of government debt of the top 10 issuers, it's 1%. So the CDS market is tiny when compared to the general cash markets. Now, for politicians to say that CDSs are causing problems, Greece is causing problems. Greece at the beginning of 2009, their own ministry said, we expect a budget deficit of 3.7%. 2009, 12.7%. Between 3.5 to 4 times their own projection. If you're a bondholder of Greece and you're looking at refinancing 20% of the value of GDP in the next 2 months, and the last month when they just did the first round of refinancing, and you're going to have a 12.7 deficit for 2009, probably an 8% for 2010, and a 7% deficit for the preceding year in 2008, you're basically saying, how are they going to repay me? That's the problem. It's not CDSs and market abuse. It's the Greek government not being able to cover its own debt obligations.
David, it's the Greek government's problem. We need credit default swaps.
Well, it's certainly the Greek government's problem. And credit default swaps are only one of the instruments through which there's distrust of the Greek government.
You don't think they should be banned, do you? You don't think?
No. I mean, they're very widely used. They've been used for quite a long time. And they haven't just been used in relation to governments, they're used in relation to all kinds of debt.
So why are European leaders saying this? Do you think that it is something that's, it's basically something that's very easy for people to digest, and they want a solution to the problems.
You're always looking for somebody to blame it. And this is not the first time that instruments of this kind or hedge funds have been blamed for causing damage in the Asian crisis. We found that there were a lot of accusations by governments that their currencies were being manipulated in some kind of way. When the facts were unearthed, it turned out that there was very widespread selling of the currency, and it was very difficult to attribute it to particular entities. So I think there is a danger that politicians faced with a crisis of this kind will reach for somebody to blame and try to find a tool. I go back to really where I started. What's really important in relation to these instruments is that they are understood by the people who use them, and the people who enter into these contracts are able to fulfill them. It may be that more needs to be done in that respect, but that's a different issue.
Okay. David and Philippe, thank you very much indeed.